This is CBC Vancouver News.
Well, there's some satisfaction that there's some accountability eventually, but it sure is woefully slow. And
a Vancouver police officer is now charged a year after a cruiser hit a man standing on East Hastings Street.
It's scary. I've had many colleagues come to me and say, every day I'm afraid. I'm afraid of what's going to happen to our patients.
Months after that warning from doctors at Surrey Memorial Hospital, some argue things have not improved, but BC's health minister is pledging assistance.
The recorded history of Stanley Park, as we are aware, there's no record of this amount of mortality.
And what is BC's brutal drought doing to Stanley Park? We'll show you the deadly impact on its trees. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Farmers, fish, and water officials across our province are hoping for rain as drought continues to dry out much of BC. Water restrictions are tightening, and the emergency management minister says it's part of a larger looming natural disaster. Stanley Park, touted as Vancouver's crown jewel, is also feeling the strain. And as Lindsay Duncombe shows us, experts warn a large number of browning trees are dead or dying.
These sprinklers are part of a strategy to save trees in Vancouver's Stanley Park.
Approximately 25% of the trees in Stanley Park are dead or dying at this time.
Killed by the western hemlock looper, a natural pest that usually causes problems for a year or two. But because the park is so dry, this infestation is in its fourth year of destruction.
In the recorded history of Stanley Park, as we are aware, there's no record of this amount of mortality.
Just one example of the slow-moving emergency that is BC's drought, gripping 80% of the province. Areas in orange or red are likely or certain to be hurt for lack of moisture.
It is unlike any kind of drought conditions the province has ever faced, and in my opinion truly is a sleeping giant of a natural disaster that we are challenged with right now. The impacts will be very, very real.
There are worries rivers will be too shallow and too warm for spawning salmon, and concerns about tourism too. In Tofino, hotels have removed plugs from bathrooms so guests won't use too much water bathing.
This summer in particular, we've received about 75% less rain than we would in a typical fairly dry summer.
Rain, though, if it comes too heavy, too hard, will bring problems of its own.
In areas that have exposed soil, either due to drought or forest fires, which are basically the result of the drought, we may wind up with increased flooding.
There's potential then for a pile-on of disasters, all of them linked, adding more anxiety, uncertainty, and change to a province that's endured so much already. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
The severe drought conditions have now forced the Sunshine Coast Regional District to impose water restrictions at the highest level. More than 20,000 people there are now under Stage 4 restrictions. That prohibits the outdoor use of drinking water, so you cannot water gardens, use sprinklers, or wash vehicles or homes. Seashell, Roberts Creek, and Half Moon Bay are all under the ban until further notice. The entire Sunshine Coast is at drought level 5, the highest classification. A Vancouver police officer has now been charged a year after a police cruiser hit a pedestrian on the downtown east side. Part of that shocking crash was reportedly caught on video and shared by the Vancouver area network of drug users. We're going to show you a portion of that video just before the man is hit, and a warning, this may be upsetting to some viewers. You can see the man on the right standing in the middle of the road, circled, not moving. Eventually, a police cruiser hits the man, and he's thrown 30 feet away. The car skids to a halt. BC's police watchdog said the man was taken to hospital with serious injuries. The Independent Investigations Office looked into what happened, and in July of this year said reasonable grounds exist to believe that one officer may have committed driving offenses. Today, the Crown announced Vancouver Police Constable Jack Zhao has been charged with 3 counts under the Motor Vehicle Act. Driving without due care and attention, failing to exercise due care to avoid colliding with a pedestrian, and speeding. At the time of the crash, Vandu said it believed the cruiser was traveling faster than the posted speed limit on that stretch of Hastings, which is 30 kilometers per hour. Vandu members and people who live on the downtown east side today say they're thinking about the victim and drivers need to slow down.
All this time, Dennis has been suffering with, physical and mental, repercussions from this incident.
It's like a freeway here, and it's not safe for our offices coming and going. For service delivery, we're trying to be helpful down here. So in our neighborhoods close to here, we were signing signatures for petitions for speed bumps. And I think it would be safer for speed bumps and necessary.
ICBC says the downtown east side has some of the most dangerous intersections in the province for pedestrians. The Vancouver Police Department says Constable Zhao is a serving officer, but wouldn't say much more. He's due in provincial court on September 28th. A multi-car crash in downtown Vancouver sent 2 people to hospital this afternoon. It happened at Pender and Richards Streets around 3:30, and as you can see, it was a rather violent crash, all during the afternoon commute. At least 4 vehicles were involved. And BC Emergency Health Services says 2 patients were transported to hospital, 1 in serious condition, the other stable. CBC News contacted police about a possible cause for that pileup. We have not yet heard back. The BC government was on the defensive today at Surrey Memorial Hospital. BC's health minister says they are working to improve healthcare access in the Fraser Valley and says progress has been made. But as Eva Yuguen-Senge reports, doctors and residents are planning a rally tomorrow.
It's scary. I've had many colleagues come to me and say, every day I'm afraid.
More than 3 months ago, dozens of doctors at Surrey Memorial Hospital spoke out about a crisis. They said a lack of resources had led to countless close calls. Today, BC's health minister said the government has made improvements.
And you can't solve all problems instantly, but these actions, these 30 actions here and actions we're taking elsewhere in the province have an impact in improving things in acute care.
However, in a phone call with CBC News, a Surrey Memorial surgeon said the solutions are stopgaps. Dr. Claudine Stornis-Bliss says the situation on the ground has not changed and staff are still stretched to the limit. Meanwhile, another Surrey ER doctor has organized a rally Saturday. The message? That the need for healthcare resources remains critical south of the Fraser.
The reason that Minister Dix was out today talking about Surrey is because we anticipate that doctors at Surrey Memorial are actually going to hold a protest to talk about how concerned they are about the situation at Surrey.
Dix says BC saw unprecedented levels of hospital patients this summer, especially in the Fraser Valley.
Demand is extraordinary. The pandemic had an impact. The public health emergency, that's the overdose public health emergency, has a profound and daily impact here in Surrey, and we're seeing a very significant increase in demand with an aging population.
Dix repeatedly pointed to what he called a decade of neglect from the previous Liberal government when it comes to healthcare, something the opposition rejects.
It is time for the minister to accept the fact that they have been in government for 2 terms, almost 7 years, and this responsibility lays on his shoulder.
But Dix says over the long term, his government is taking action.
Here in Surrey, we're building a second hospital. It takes time. You got to get the land. We're going to be announcing more details about it soon, and that takes a while.
The province says more progress will be made over the next 18 months. Eva Yuguen-Senge, CBC News, Surrey.
Some other health experts worry our province's health resources could come under further strain as we head into the fall.
We're in a crunch phase that we would normally see ourselves at the height of flu season. So in November, December, January, we're seeing it in the summer this time. If we do have another big surge of respiratory infections like we normally do towards the late fall, early winter, that could really strain a system that's already strained. Already we're well above 100% capacity in our hospitals. If we have another big surge in the late fall or winter, that's going to be a negative impact in terms of waiting time, quality of care, and it might affect healthcare worker burnout as well.
Dr. Curry says masking indoors and keeping your vaccines up to date are 2 good ways to help avoid or lessen the impact of COVID and other respiratory diseases. New numbers on jobs and unemployment rolled out today across the country. Statistics Canada says we saw a nationwide growth of 40,000 jobs, 12,000 here in BC. The unemployment rate for August remains unchanged at 5.5%. That ends a streak that saw the jobless rate rise across the country in each of the previous 3 months. In our province, the jobless rate dropped 0.2 of a point in August to just over 5%. StatsCan says in order for the unemployment rate to remain steady, the economy needs to create about 50,000 jobs every month. The CBC's Anis Hedari has broken down the numbers and what it all means for the economy.
There were more construction workers in Canada this August, more than 33,000 worth. And professionals, scientists, or technical workers, an even higher boost, more than 52,000 more. It's not all positive. Jobs were lost in some sectors, like education and manufacturing. So overall, the Canadian economy added 39,900 jobs last month. But that's less than half of what's needed to keep up with population growth. That means the employment rate went down slightly. And economists say more jobs doesn't make a stronger job market.
Canadian population is growing really quickly. And what that does is it raises the ceiling on how many jobs potentially could be added a month, but it also raises the floor on the bar of what we should consider a strong report.
It's news the Bank of Canada may welcome.
The sort of supply of workers is growing more than the demand for workers, so supply is catching up with demand, and those pressures are easing. We expect to see, for a period, employment growth continue below population growth.
So these job numbers aren't setting off alarm bells.
But we haven't hit a turning point. We're more sort of like tapping the brakes rather than hitting a U-turn.
Many who watch the economy agree. These job numbers show a bit of a slowdown. So Tiff Macklem and the Bank of Canada probably won't use them as a reason to increase interest rates. Anis Hedari, CBC News, Calgary.
Heads up from riders and motorists. The Whistler Grand Fondo cycling event is set to take place tomorrow, and that means there will be some traffic disruptions between here and Whistler. The Lions Gate Bridge will be closed for a few hours tomorrow morning, and the speed limit on the Sea to Sky Highway will be lowered. Some areas will also be down to single-lane alternating traffic as about 5,000 cyclists take part. Last year, organizers apologized to participants after complaints about food and water shortages. They say this year's event is a chance to redeem themselves.
I think people understand that mistakes can happen. And if you man up and own it and let people know you're going to change it, then they're giving us another chance, which we're very appreciative of.
He says they have about 30% more volunteers to help this time, and they focused on stocking aid stations with enough food and fluids. The weather forecast is gearing up for a great ride tomorrow. Still with travel, Highway 97 between Summerland and Kelowna is still closed by that massive rock slide. It's been a huge problem for travelers in that region. The province says it will reopen north of Summerland to single-lane alternating traffic by next weekend. In the meantime, though, one man has been getting very creative about his commute on land, water, and in the air.
The first day the rock slide happened on my, was able to get home from work before it happened. And the second day I took the back forest roads, and that was an adventure because it wasn't really marked and it wasn't really kept up. My usual commute takes me about 18 minutes from Peachland to Summerland every day. Now the back roads, I take the Forest Service roads that they have set up. It took 2 hours plus to get home, and I wasn't really sure if I was on the right roads or not because there's not a lot of reception either. So the next day, the idea came up that I would park at Okanagan South Provincial Park and hike up over the mountain because we have this amazing vineyard called Garnet Valley Ranch up over the back of that hill. I realized it probably wasn't the safest way to get there either, right? So when I got to the top of the hill, the vineyard guys picked me up and gave me a ride to the rest of the way. Then I was offered a boat ride home one day from a fellow person in the wine industry. Thank you, Ron, for that. And that again, it was wavy and rocky and wasn't really an ideal situation, right? So then everyone started to give me suggestions of what else I should do. The next idea that came up was, a friend of a friend had a paraglide, right? And he said, you should give it a try. So it still involved the big hike up the hill and then a paraglide into the vineyard. Definitely more of a fun thing to do than really an economical way to spend my time, but people are getting a kick out of it and trying to turn lemons into lemonade, and the show must go on at a winery, and so I had to really think of different ways to get there.
The Okanagan's Craig Pingle.
Definitely Beyonce is definitely her own entity.
After the break, we'll have more on what's running out across town as fans prepare for Beyonce's Vancouver concert on Monday. We'll show you after this. Hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream. Thanks for being here. A staggering amount of food is wasted each year in this country. A lot of it thrown out by grocery stores and restaurants that's still good enough to eat. Now there's a new tool for retailers to keep that food waste down and help customers save money.
Tim Schultz can't always sell all the food in his store, even if it's still good enough to eat. The owner of Local Market in Regina, Schultz tries to reuse his food as much as possible, but some still ends up in the garbage.
We might have thrown out 25 to 50 pounds a week or something like that when it all added up.
Now, Schultz has another way to keep that food out of the trash. His market is one of several Saskatchewan businesses using Too Good To Go, a food waste reduction app that just launched here in the last month. It allows retailers to put usable surplus food together in packages that can be sold to customers at a reduced price. It's just another tool to cut down on the impact of food waste, a big problem in Saskatchewan. A 2020 report showed the province produced the third highest amount of food waste per capita in Canada. And that has effects on our climate. Food waste produces methane, a potent greenhouse gas, when it's dumped in landfills. And estimates from 2020 show over a quarter of all methane emissions in Canada came from the waste industry. Food waste isn't just an environmental issue. Regina Food Bank CEO John Bailey says it impacts food security too. And food waste apps like Too Good To Go could be part of the solution.
If it means that folks that are struggling to make ends meet are able to purchase at a reduced price instead of visiting a food bank, we're all for it.
But Wanda Martin, an associate professor of nursing at the University of Saskatchewan, says although these apps are good for people looking for a deal, they don't necessarily help people who can't afford food at all.
The process is that you get a surprise bag. So if you're getting a surprise bag and you're putting money down for something, you don't know what it's going to be and how well you can consume that. That'll be a bit of a challenge for people that I am most concerned about, the people who are using charity food systems.
Back at Local Market, Tim Schultz is getting his next bag ready to sell. Although he doesn't make a lot of money through Too Good To Go sales, he says the products he's put on the app have sold quickly.
One of the people came to pick up and she said, these are harder to get than Taylor Swift tickets.
But when people are able to buy a bag, Schultz can feel good knowing he's making an impact on people and the planet. Ethan Williams, CBC News, Regina.
Beyonce fans are getting information ahead of her world tour stop in Vancouver on Monday. As Yasmin Gandam reports, stores are selling out of silver clothing and accessories after Queen Bee herself asked concertgoers to wear that color to celebrate her birthday month.
Have you seen anything like this before for other concerts?
No. No, it's been definitely, Beyonce is definitely her own, entity.
Silver clothing has been flying off the shelves at Mintage on Robson Street. Beyonce fans were looking to dress for the occasion by adding metallic shimmer to their concert outfits. But this vintage store has completely sold out of silver clothes.
This is the silver section, usually.
Yeah.
So there's nothing left.
There's nothing left. It's been pretty much scoured out by the Beyonce fans and everything.
Welcome to the Renaissance. It's a way for fans to say her name. Beyonce asked fans to sport silver in celebration of her 42nd birthday.
When they come in, they're like, do you have anything silver? And I'm like, Beyonce? And they're like, yeah.
Other clothing stores such as Zara and H&M have also been selling out of their silver merchandise.
I've seen her 5 times. I've seen the Knowles Carter family multiple times. I think I'm up to 6 for the entire family.
Other fans are unable to attend the show, but they're not letting that break their souls and are doing what they can to secure tickets.
Yeah, I called every morning on the radio. Nothing.
Oh, okay. Well, best of luck. I hope you get a chance to go.
Thank you.
Would you want to wear the whole silver outfit and everything?
She said you have to.
Fans will be flocking to BC Place on Monday to attend Beyonce's Renaissance tour. It's safe to say fans are already crazy in love. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
There's a live shot of the W on Woodward's Plaza with a port in the background. A pleasant day in the South Coast. But Lord, we need some rain across our province. Darius Madavi will tell us if and when that might happen in your BC-wide weather forecast right after this.
The 320 passengers were flown into Seattle from Alaska, then bused to various hotels throughout the city for an emotional and tear-filled reunion with loved ones.
Let me have your bag.
Many on board the vessel were elderly, but despite their harrowing experiences in getting off the ship and spending agonizing hours in the lifeboats before they were rescued, most were in good physical shape. 13 people were hospitalized and remain in Alaska. The passengers, many of them seasoned veterans of sea travel, escaped the flaming Holland America ship with only what they were wearing. Many were dressed in only pajamas and nightgowns when they were plucked off the lifeboats by their rescuers. Each had a story to tell. All praised the rescue operation of the Canadian and American Coast Guards, but some were critical of the actions of some of the ship's crew.
Well, we thought the crew was pretty inefficient, and we weren't notified that we were just asked to come up on deck. It was a small fire. We weren't told that it was to bring anything with us. We weren't even told to bring life jackets. We didn't know we were going to the lifeboats when we went up.
Some people panicked, some people pushed. But you gotta understand, you know, they were frightened.
Everybody's been so wonderful to us. The men that helped us out, really wonderful.
We were treated very well, and our lives were saved by the Coast Guards and that tanker.
The cruise company, Holland America, also tried as hard as it could to keep the passengers away from the media. In Alaska, state troopers refused to allow them near the survivors, and in Seattle, they were whisked from their plane to an awaiting bus without taking them through the terminal. A West Vancouver couple, Cora and Ken Spears, were among a handful of Canadians on board.
We started to row the thing to get it away from the boat, and then the rudder was tied off, so there was no way you could use the rudder, so there was no way you could go anyway. But however, we were, it was unfortunate, but the thing is this, we were out about 11 hours, and then the helicopters came. Well, they came prior to that, but then they start taking them off. And guess who got on all these crew fellas in the band? They just walked all over all the women. And as soon as the basket came down, they jumped in it. So we had a great old time there. But however, we all got safely on, and they took us from the helicopter over to this Williamsburg tanker. And the people on that were just fabulous. But the main thing, when they say about a miraculous escape, if the passengers on that ship were really intelligent, if it wasn't for them, it could have been a real catastrophe.
The cruise that began as a dream for so many and turned into a nightmare has a happy ending, with loved ones reunited once again before they take their final trip home, secure that all have survived. Bob Gillingham, CBC News, Seattle.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. September is Literacy Month. Have fun and support the cause by joining CBC Vancouver's Dan Burritt at Dakota's Team Trivia Challenge on September 27th. For tickets, register at dakota.ca. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
Just before we get to weather, a little health story for you. It's always a relief to reunite with a loved one who's been getting some urgent medical attention. That feeling is not limited to people. Take a look. A baby chimp is now back in the tight arms of his surrogate mother, Samantha. There we go. After being treated for a snake bite at an Australian zoo, 3-year-old Gundali was bitten inside the chimpanzee enclosure on Tuesday. The little one was whisked away and received immediate treatment and care. And very happy to be back with Mom the next day, hanging on to her.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
As we gaze into the weekend, Darius Madavi, our CBC Science and Climate Specialist, is here to tell us what we're going to get weather-wise. And we have to acknowledge we actually really need some rain.
We do. And so if you're really worried about the drought conditions, I'm afraid I don't have very much good news for you. If you just want a nice weekend, I might be able to do something. So as we head into tomorrow, we stay dry across the province. It's not until Sunday that we start to see that big band of moisture move across to the northern half of the island and up the north and central coast. We get some good rainfall for those places, but it's very uncertain, and I'd say around 50% chance some of that comes to Victoria, lower chance some of that makes it all the way over here to Vancouver. Meanwhile, for the rest of the province, we're staying dry as a bone for at least into the beginning of next week, likely a bit later. You can see that a little bit of this moisture might make its way into central BC, but this is trace amounts if it even makes it to the ground. So don't expect any major changes in the drought situation as we get to the other side of this weekend. In terms of temperatures, this is where I have some good news for people that might just want to spend the weekend outside, because we seem pretty nice. We have pretty much low 20s right here on the water in Vancouver, further inland around the mid to high 20s. Similar story for the interior, and we stay that high in the interior as we head into Sunday. But temperatures do come down a little bit for places on the island as we see that rain move through the area. In terms of smoke, because that's also pretty important now. Also we get to see Monday. And then in terms of smoke, because that's also a pretty important part of getting outside these days, we look pretty good on the coast, a little bit of smoke at some times, but this is the maximum forecast for the day. So for the most part, it should be clear. It might be a couple smoky periods. It's much worse as we'd expect in northern BC. Similar story on Sunday. The patterns shift a little bit, but it's a similar story in terms of that smoke, just saying a bit of that outflow pattern pushing that smoke our way. We have that clearing pattern through the province, so tons of sunshine for the entire province. And here in Vancouver, we have just a little bit of cloud moving in for the beginning of next week, but still very little, if any, rain to speak of. If we get any, it'll be overnight Sunday into Monday, but I wouldn't count on it.
Okay. Thanks very much, Darius. Have a good weekend.
Thanks. You too.
And that is your late news for Friday. Thank you for joining us tonight on all this busy week. For news anytime, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is tomorrow morning at 6:30 on CBC Radio 1. And CBC Vancouver News will be back here tomorrow night at 10:30. So please join us then. Good night. Enjoy your weekend. Please stay safe.